What we're going to attempt to do is give you guys a little bit of a feel for how we're attempting to connect people and data and systems through the use of IntegraLink in critical infrastructure types of applications. So let's talk about the licensing that comes together to build up this map, or the technologies. First of all, we have Google Maps for Business in the background. That's the exact same product that you get when you go to maps.google.com and you go there as a consumer, and it's free. Since we're using it commercially, we pay for it, but then we have the ability to put our data, our private data, on top of a Google map. This is private data. Only the correct people have access to this information. It is not publicly available. On top of that base map, then, we have a product called GME, or Google Maps Engine. And basically, you can think of that as Google's GIS in the cloud. So what we've done is we've uploaded information like the centerline layer, or this imagery. In this case, it's about 20 gigabytes of imagery. But it can be disseminated back to devices, PCs, phones, tablets. It can be disseminated back to all of those devices using the exact same technology that Google serves up their imagery with. And then finally, on top of all of that, we have a product called IntegraLink. And that's really the thing that's wrapping all of this together. We're utilizing Google technology and then adding sort of vertically specific components on top of that Google technology to wrap it all together and make this system that enables people to use their data much more simply. The first view that we're going to look at here is an operational pipeline system. In this case, it happens to be Boardwalk Pipeline, and it's really only about half of their operation. We're actually actively working today to get the other half of the operation in this system as well. But for now, we have half of the system in operation inside of IntegraLink. What you see on the map right now represents approximately 7,000 miles of pipeline with hundreds, maybe even over 1,000 users within the Boardwalk organization having access to this particular system. So you can see it's a relatively large scale, both with respect to geographic boundary, but also number of users that have access to the system. What we're trying to do is raise up that visibility, give more users access to this information, and do it in a way that's simple and usable for them so that they can understand the data without going through weeks and weeks and weeks of training. The greenish area is exactly the same results that you would get if you went to maps.google.com and typed in Memphis, recognizing, of course, that we're only returning the top few. The bluish area then is also searching their pipeline information system, or sometimes referred to as their GIS, but essentially the database about their assets. So what we've done here then is made it very simple for all those users to access this information, both just geographic boundary information, but then also information in their GIS. And I can also turn on additional layers. So we've got a layer control here, and I can turn on, for example, Boardwalk's custom imagery. So what I have on the map now, the blue line represents the pipeline center line. It's the location of the asset. The kind of grayish background behind it is actually an imagery corridor that's about a mile wide following the pipeline. So let's take a look then at some of those sort of vertically focused problems. So I'm going to just change my search term up here, and I'm going to type in a milepost plus footage number. I also add Fay, or Fayetteville, and this is for the Fayetteville lateral. It's the name of the pipeline, and I happen to know that as a person working at this pipeline operator. And so when I do that, then I get only one station location. You may have noticed before that I got actually 18 of them. In this case, though, now I can zoom directly to that location along the pipeline system. Right? So here now, very quickly as a pipeline operator, I'm able to go in and type in a milepost plus footage. It's something that everybody at Boardwalk understands. They all understand this way of referencing along their pipeline system. They're able to very quickly type in a milepost plus footage in this case. They can also type in station numbers. They can type in pipeline names. They can type in city locations. They can type in McDonald's in New York City, right? And they're going to get results. But the key is that we're allowing them to navigate the map and to navigate the information system in a way that is familiar to them. Okay, so now that I've located this, or I've navigated to this location, I'm going to just switch over to the satellite view, and we can see here, I'm going to get rid of my search results for a minute. And so we can see here in the satellite view, for example, right down here, we have a valve setting. I can very quickly now click on my pipeline. And when I click on my pipeline, I get search results as well. We call this click to search. And now I can see attribution about this particular valve. So I can expand the details here, and I can see the manufacturer. I can see when this valve was installed. And you can see how quickly the system is responding to my actions. Beyond that, I can also, if we go back up here to the road, we can use Google Street View. So we've got a road crossing here of the pipeline. We can use Google Street View. We can drop that Street View guide down. And now we can actually see the photograph that was taken from the car. Have you guys seen the Street View cars? It's the car with the big thing on top with the camera spinning around taking photographs. And I think you said 20 million miles of Street View imagery. So we're very easily able to familiarize ourselves with the environment around the pipeline in this location through a combination of both IntegraLink and then Google's technology supporting us. Okay, so let's switch gears here for a moment. That was a quick overview of sort of an operational system. Now we're going to look at how IntegraLink is also being used within the transmission pipeline space to support engineering projects or pipeline expansion projects. So what I'm going to do here then is switch site views. And I'm going to kind of reformat my map. And so first of all, I switch site views. That concept of a site view is a very important concept. What that basically means is I've transitioned who I am from being Colby, the guy that worked at Boardwalk Pipeline, to Colby, the guy that is working on an engineering project at Willbros and needs to understand this single version of the truth, essentially, right? So this site view gives us the ability to control who gets access to what information. It's a way of securing the information, but it's also a way of really tightly focusing a map to a single or a specific set of users, right? So we can build maps that make sense for users, and we can add data to those maps that make sense for those users. Again, really simplifying the picture for those users. And then beyond that, I can also click the map, and I'm going to get this search result here, maps and drawings. And this is really, really important. So when I turn that on, we see this rectangular shape show up on the map. What this is saying is for this location along the pipeline system, this rectangular area, we have all of this other associated documentation for this location. As you all know, the map is not the only work product that's built from an engineering project. There's a lot of other work products. And all of those work products can also be available then here through the mapping interface, but you can gain access to them through the mapping interface, but they're actually being stored, in this case, on Google Drive. So I can click the HDD folder here, and I can actually see the schematic for the bore, or the drill, I should say. We can go back up a level, and we can actually see the IFC alignment sheet here as well. So I can click on the alignment sheet, and we can see that. I'm looking at it in preview mode now. We can also download that information and store it on our local machine, I guess, if we wanted to, but why do that when you have it in Drive? This is also key back on the operational side. I didn't show it there, but it's also key there. This gives you really that verifiable, traceable, and complete. It's a real big word, or 3 words now in the pipeline industry, but it's key to be able to associate the documentation that backs up the records that are your GIS. And those records are right here. They can be linked directly to that GIS information. So I'm going to switch site views here again, and we're going to take a look at this Cablevision site view. In this case, Willbros was executing a project. You can see here in the New York City metro area. And in this case, we were doing depth of cover surveys depth of cover surveys in support of a damage prevention company, in support of a damage prevention program for Cablevision in this case. So essentially, we had field technicians out in the field with their line locators locating fiber optic lines in this case, and better understanding how well covered those facilities were. And so you can see, red, yellow, and green lines that represent the cover of those facilities. So you can see again that you can very, very easily and very simply familiarize yourself with any location where your assets exist by a couple of clicks and maybe a little bit of typing on the keyboard to navigate to a location. And then beyond that, we can also, again, click to search on the map, and we can start to understand depths as well here. So we can see here in this case that we've got about 18 inches of cover, which is to say that we're in good shape, right, with this particular facility. So this really was all in support of a damage prevention program, in this case for a fiber optic company. But again, the key here is to make, as the project is progressing, add visibility to the project, and then also at the end of the project to better understand your data and be location aware associated with the data that was collected out in the field. We're going to go to another site view. In this case, we did work for National Grid. It was a leak survey and meter inspection project. So we have Willbros has field technicians on the ground. In this case, we're looking at Glens Falls, New York, in upstate New York. We have field technicians on the ground, essentially going door to door, and inspecting meters as part of National Grid's leak survey and meter inspection program. So essentially what's happening is those field technicians go from house to house, and if the meter's in the front yard, they can inspect the meter right then and there on the spot. If the meter maybe is in the backyard or behind a locked fence, or maybe it's inside, those technicians then are leaving door hangers on the door and instigating the homeowner to give us a call and schedule an appointment for us to get in there and perform that inspection. So in either case, what we wanted to do here is provide data both to the office and to the field and integrate them so that they could be communicating as calls come into the call center, appointments get scheduled, field technicians are able to go and access those homes and inspect those meters. At this extent of the map, we can see very simply two things. First of all, the distribution mains, those are the blue lines, and then the rectangles that we see are zone maps or grid maps. It's a very common way of a distribution operator breaking down their systems into sort of understandable chunks. In any case, it's giving us a very quick visual understanding of where we have work to do, where we're doing work, and where we're done. I think it's also important to understand at this point that these meters, I should say the mains and the zone maps, are all sort of a normal part of a distribution operator's GIS. Many times these meters are not. And what we've done in this particular case is we used a process called geocoding, which essentially turns addresses into lat-long locations, so that we can then locate those meters on a map by X, Y, or coordinate pair as opposed to that address. So we use the address to turn it into mappable data. Okay, so we have field technicians out in the field accessing or walking house to house. Let's look at it from the perspective of the person in the office receiving the phone calls from a homeowner that's gotten a door hanger. All right, so I can come in here if I'm in the office. I can type in a phone number. So think of this, right? You're in the office, somebody's giving you a phone call, and you say, oh, yes, Mr. Smith or Mrs. Smith or whoever. Can you give me your phone number? Or can you give me your address? Or can you give me your name, right? With any of that sort of information, then the person in the office has the ability to access their data here through IntegraLink. So we can turn things on and off, ask questions of the systems, and dig into this data. And again, I don't have to know the GIS intimately to get to this data. I can type in things that make sense in my head and get access to this information. I hope that we've given you a little bit of a feel for how we are using IntegraLink to try and simplify the world for these users, to help them understand their data and have more access to their information than they previously had. We're trying to do it in a way that is simple and understandable and usable, and it's available anywhere.